Works.
Welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com. What is going on, everybody? It is Friday. Fridays with Derek the Kid. I love the ring to that, actually. I'm very excited. Noah Strackbein here, joined with Derek Bell. It's week 4. It's the Green Bay Packers. The Steelers head to Lambeau Field to face a red-hot Packers team, actually. Meanwhile, the ship might be sinking in Pittsburgh. Derek, just to start it off here, what are your first thoughts on the Green Bay Packers in this matchup this Sunday?
It's gonna be a tough one. I mean, Green Bay's playing. The last 2 weeks are playing really well. Rodgers looks like that week 1 performance is definitely a fluke, man. He's playing lights out these past couple of weeks, throwing some darts. So it's gonna be tough, man. They got a lot of dudes on defense too. It's gonna be tough. I think the Steelers are getting healthy. That's really encouraging for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's where we're going to start is the Steelers injury report. They get TJ Watt back. They get Alex Highsmith back. They get Juju and Deontay healthy. Ben, obviously, he played last week, but there's still some questions. On the opposite end of that, Chase Claypool is questionable heading into the game on Sunday. He did not practice on Friday with a hamstring injury after hurting it on Thursday. That's never good news. I think it's safe to assume he probably won't play this Sunday. How big of a loss is that? And at the same time, how big of a gain is it to get Juju and Deontay back in the receiving corps?
Yeah, I thought Chase fought last week. I don't know if he played like extremely well, but he fought, man. They were wounded all over the receiving corps. Like without Juju, you had to see Cody White make his first NFL action. So yeah, it's a big loss for Chase. Takes away some of the stuff that they can do vertically, although James Washington can kind of do some of the same stuff, just maybe not quite the athlete that Claypool is.
No.
Getting Juju back, that's been security blanket underneath, so it's gonna be a pain tolerance thing with him with the rib injury, so that's gonna be tough. But I think he goes. I think he'll play pretty well. Deontay, I think that's maybe the saving grace for the Steelers offense. I think you can make an argument that he's their best player right now. So with the way that he's played the first 3 weeks, I really believe that, man. I'm excited to see. We're gonna get to see a lot of him and Jair Alexander, and that's really exciting. That's gonna be an awesome matchup.
I think we talked about that before we jumped on here. The left side is usually where Deontay is. That's always where Alexander is. That's a tough one because Alexander, everybody's mentioned it all week. You mentioned it a couple of times before we jumped on here. He might be one of the best cornerbacks, if not, top 5, maybe top 10 cornerback in the NFL right now. Dude's always making catches or interceptions. He's always making plays. It's actually pretty ridiculous, especially against a team that has injury or that has interception troubles right now. Ben has struggled to read the field in the last 2 weeks. You could say what you want about Buffalo. I think he struggled to read the field in Buffalo as well. He's throwing behind pretty much everybody. You could say whatever you want about his physical deterioration and whether or not he could still make those throws. I think he can. I think his timing is off. And whether that's just chemistry or whether that's him not being able to make those throws anywhere or anymore, I think we'll learn that as the season progresses. But there is hope. Yeah. And we jumped on this before we jumped on. The Packers defense plays pretty off ball when they drop into coverage, which is huge for a guy like Deontay Johnson. It's huge for a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster. How big of a week do you think either of them could have because of it?
Yeah, so, I think that's definitely not – the Packers, they play a lot of quarters. Joe Barry's got – I think Nick talked about this a little bit. He's got the cover 2 background. But they play off, man. They'll play quarters. That interception that Jair had against the Niners, him in quarters coverage, just a phenomenal play from a freak. Honestly, but I think you're gonna see on tape they've shown a lot of 8 to 10 yard cushions, which is not. The Steelers they throw mostly underneath now, so that's gonna mean a lot of I'm curious to see if they play like that against the Steelers, but it could mean a lot of those underneath quick slants and stuff like that to Deontay Johnson, where you can get him out in space and see if he can make something work. So it's gonna be very interesting because I don't know how much they're gonna really get up and press, even though teams have had success against the Steelers doing that. So.
Do you think that not having Chase kind of benefits Pittsburgh because now, who are you going to press? Are you going to press James Washington? Is that who you're trying to stop the deep ball with?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of difficult because like James and Claypool both kind of have some of the same struggles like at the line of scrimmage. Like they neither one of them really play very well against press, particularly like when there's contact and the corners are able to get their hands on them. But on the flip side of that, Deontay's not the guy you want to press because he's too quick. So like that's why I think is like going to be really exciting to see. I hope we get some press matchups against from Jair, because even though Jair plays a lot of off ball and does a little bit of freelancing, I think that'd be really cool because I think Jair has some of the best footwork for any corner in the league. And I think Deontay, I think he's one of the best in the league at the line of scrimmage. So I think that matchup could be really exciting. I'm just not sure how much we'll get it because they play so much off. So
very true. Let me ask you this. Jair, you just said he plays a lot of freelance. How dangerous is that for a quarterback like Ben, who has struggled the last 2 weeks reading the field?
Yeah, so I mean, Jair doesn't shadow, so that's something to take note of. Some of the top corners do. He doesn't, or he hasn't so far. He might Sunday. You never know. But they did move him around a couple times in the slot when they were in zone coverage, and then like with the match quarters that they play, when no one's in his zone and he thinks he's good, he kind of does a little bit of eye watching on the quarterback. So I saw him kind of jump some stuff underneath, like on crossers and things like that, in places that you wouldn't expect a backside corner to really read. Like he's really good at like route recognition, working in that system. So I think it is something to take note of. Like, Ben's gonna have to make sure he knows where he's at, even if he thinks he might be out of the play. Like Jair tries to get himself into plays. You saw that against the Niners, like that deep ball that he picked off. He's not supposed to be there. Like that's the right throw. Like that's the right read from Jimmy G. Jair just made a play.
So. He just went, and it helps because that defensive backfield is just not him. Like there's guys everywhere, and I think they got dudes, and I think that's like people try to compare it to like a Minka, like roaming the field type situation, but like the Packers defense is that first off, they got more chemistry. They've been around. I get that, guys like Savage and Stokes are kind of somewhat new, but they've been around each other enough, at least the select core, to say that they trust each other in pretty much every situation here the last 2 years, which allows Jair to move around that much. Savage, a dude. And I think that's a game changer for Pittsburgh, because not only do they have to worry about Jair on the backside, but Savage over there at a safety is.
Yeah, I mean the Steelers got a really good safety tandem in Minka, who's an All-Pro, and then Terrell Emmons, who's a solid player. Mm-hmm. Green Bay, Amos and Savage, man, like they're up there too. Like they're both really good players, kind of interchangeable guys. Savage is a guy that the draft community freaking freaked out over, because he's got a freaky ability to click and close and really fly. I mean, he's an instinctive athlete. The corners on the other side are like Kevin King. He's been there for a little while. He was there the last time we played the Packers.
He
sometimes get exposed a little bit. They do have Eric Stokes. He's another guy that they drafted. He was their first round pick. The Steelers were really familiar with him. They were at his pro day at Georgia, so they know what he's about and what he's capable of. And I thought in week 2's game against the Lions, I thought he played like really, really well. He had 2 pass breakups that were pretty impressive. So.
Gotta toss this fun fact out there for anybody who forgot it. The Packers actually passed on TJ Watt to draft Kevin King in 2017. Yeah. I have I'm almost positive TJ Watt has 28 quarterback hits or something, or maybe 28 pass deflections in his career, and it's like 2 more than Kevin King. I'm almost positive it's pass deflections that he has 2 more of than Kevin King in 2 years. I mean, if that stings, it stings a little bit. There is good news though. On the defensive line, even if they had a 4-sack game against Jimmy G and the 49ers this past weekend, they have not really looked good. They're dealing with injuries without Zadarius Smith. Kenny Clark has been there, and he's been a monster. He trails only Aaron Donald and Cam Hayward for quarterback pressures this season. But overall, the group has been somewhat lackluster, somewhat underwhelming, like you described it earlier. Can the Steelers somewhat take advantage of that?
Yeah, so Kenny Clark's like a game wrecker in the same way that like TJ Watt or Cam Hayward has a chance to, really break a game open. It's obviously concerning because Kendrick Green's going to be lined up across from him. The interior offensive line's like struggled is the nice way of putting it. So, Kenny's played out of his mind. He has like something like 14 or 15 pressures on the season. The rest of that defensive line only has like 5 or 6 combined.
Mm-hmm.
So he's really been carrying the load for them despite, not playing like a freakishly high number of snaps. But he's a guy that's disruptive against the run. He's disruptive against the pass. Knows Darius Smith. So they're not, it's not a elite pass rushing unit or, this would be a nice week to see the Steelers' young offensive line kind of gel a little bit. Maybe at least, even if they don't play well, like take a step forward instead of backwards. So.
Yeah, I that's what I was going to say. I think that it's a good week. I don't really expect the Steelers' offensive line to be good at any point this season, but I do expect them to like somewhat gel and maybe get, I want to say just more confident. I think confidence is the only thing that's going to make this team better. And I also think that Zach Banner coming back whenever that happens, which could be 4 weeks from now, makes this offensive line better because the group doesn't have a leader right now. You could say, yeah, it's Kevin Dotson or it's Trey Turner, I guess. But like Trey Turner is as new as everybody else. Kevin Dotson is a second-year guy who's not really playing well. It's got to be Zach Banner, and that's the only guy they could count on for that. But leaders make groups like offensive lines, especially bad offensive lines, better. Marquise Pouncey is a prime example of that last season.
Yeah.
This week is a week to take that step forward. What are you saying?
I said I definitely agree. I mean, like Banner, like he has really limited tape, but like, he's a guy that's been in the organization for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely seems a little more outspoken.
Nobody
a guy like
Chooks.
Banner. Yeah. And then a guy like Chooks or any of the rookies. But I mean, we're at the point now where, we're just searching for answers. I mean, Ben's not gonna last much longer behind this offensive line. Unless they start to really take some steps forward. And that really needs to begin this Sunday. I mean, there needs to be not a sense of panic, but there needs to be a sense of urgency with this offense in particular, that we need to start seeing some life and some growth. Even if it's not pretty or consistent, you need to see something positive.
Yeah, I agree. I think positive is the perfect way to put it. And it doesn't even have to be like, Ben can't hit the ground, obviously. Like the dude's 39 years old. Every time he stands up, I'm like, wow, that hurt. Like that hurt me.
Right.
But I think what could help is like we were just talking about, the Packers play so off ball that it could allow Najee Harris to get a lot of open space once he gets his hands on the football. And even if those are passes, those are dish outs like we've seen the last 2 weeks. The offensive line's pretty athletic outside of Trey Turner. They could get out there. That's how this could be a positive day for that offensive line, is just finding ways to get Najee rolling and to keep Ben up straight. If they could do both of those things, for one, I think it leaves them with a pretty good shot to actually win a football game. And for two, it's going to carry that confidence next week into Denver, or not into Denver, but back home against Denver, which might be the scariest game they've played so far.
Yeah. Denver's defense is good, man. It's good.
Denver's defense is scary good. Scary good at the front seven, which is the last thing you want to hear for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
When it comes to that offensive line or that defensive line, though, I also don't expect them to kind of roll over. I think that the biggest thing, we're going to talk about this and people are going to be hearing it and they're going to be like, okay, the Packers line isn't that good. No, they sacked Jimmy G 4 times last week.
Yeah.
And if that's 4 times against a pretty good 49ers offensive line, that could be 4 times against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's not a given game for anybody.
Yeah, there is no easy matchups right now for the Steelers offense.
No.
I mean, when you're playing like they're playing from an execution standpoint, I mean, there's no freebies. In NFL, there really aren't any anyway. But the biggest thing that I would just say, that I'm sure it's a big topic of conversation at the Steelers facility this week, but they cannot let Kenny Clark ruin this game. Like, you can't let him take over the game and ruin your entire game plan. So that's going to mean he needs to be the main point of emphasis. You really don't want to leave probably Kendrick Green in a lot of one-on-ones against him in pass protection, because that's not going to be something that's advantageous for the Steelers.
No, it could get real dangerous real quick. And I honestly think he's going to attack Kevin Dotson's side quite a bit in this game. This is an opportunity for Dotson and Green to mesh a lot better than they've been. And it's also an opportunity for Dotson to trust Green moving forward, because I think that's been their biggest issue, has been Dotson trying to do way too much for a second-year dude, and he's getting eaten alive while he's trying to do it. It hasn't looked good, but I think that's his only problem, or at least his biggest problem. On the other side of the football, Aaron Rodgers is, might be the most dangerous man outside of Tom Brady with a football in his hand, and that includes Patrick Mahomes. He's Joe Hayden's favorite quarterback, which I thought was awesome and actually hilarious. Davante Adams is, we said it before the show, the best wide receiver in the NFL. The Steelers have a healthy defense, though, and that changes a whole ton. What does having TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith back mean to even just slowing down this offense?
Yeah. No David Bakhtiari for the Packers. Yep. He's still on the pup for first 6 weeks of the season. So they got some new tackles that haven't necessarily been bad, but they're still pretty green. So when you get a guy like TJ Watt, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Kenny Clark, right? I mean, everybody in Green Bay is probably saying, we can't let TJ wreck this game. But that's the thing about having TJ back. That's why he's the highest paid defensive player in the league. Like, he's going to come in. He's going to play well, man. Like, TJ's going to make an impact on the game. Like, it's just a matter of when. So it'll be nice. I hope they're able to get Highsmith too. They really struggled last week. Without TJ, they only had one pressure on Joe Burrow. Just not acceptable. You're not going to have success on defense like that. So getting TJ back, man, I mean, words can't describe how, massive that is. So.
Yeah, it really is. And last week, I mean, people could say like they were like underwhelmed with they really didn't like Melvin Ingram's performance. Well, it was Cam Hayward, Melvin Ingram, a bunch of backups. Like your offensive line doesn't have to worry about Derek Kushka or Jameer Jones. Like they just have to worry about Melvin Ingram. That's all they got to worry about. So,
and that's the thing. I think he played pretty well too. Like Melvin wasn't like impactful, but he made a couple. The roughing call was a joke, but I mean, he had a couple other rushes that would have been productive. But I think like getting those guys back as that trio, that's gonna be so beneficial for the Steelers.
Yeah, it changes. I mean, you watched what they did in week 1, and a lot of people are like, oh, maybe that was a fluke game for Buffalo. I don't think it was. I think that was what the Steelers defense could actually do. I think if there was any fluke there, it was the blocked punt. But even so, like, you get that blocked punt, maybe you win the ball game. It doesn't mean that the defense didn't play as good as they played. And I expect them to play this week. At the same time, I am very nervous about Davante Adams. I'm very nervous. Maybe not so much about a guy like Randall Cobb, but it's still Aaron Rodgers, and he still enjoys time to time to go over the top. And, we've talked about this before. The Steelers have struggled to stop players or to stop teams from going over the top the last 2 weeks, really the last 3 weeks, but Josh Allen missed a pretty nice throw in week 1. Henry Ruggs, Jamar Chase, it's been rough. What do you see that's going wrong for the Steelers defense in these situations?
I mean, it's just kind of it's just not keeping a lid, man, on these explosive plays. I know Tomlin talked about it, Joe Hayden talked about it this week, but everything a little bit different. I was disappointed in the rep from Pierre last week, right before. I mean, that was such a big play. Like the Steelers had just scored. You're thinking you're going to go into half and like you give up an explosive touchdown like that, and then the Bengals come out again after half and get a long field goal drive. So. But the play to Chase, man, they didn't get they didn't get their hands on him. If you let a guy like Jamar Chase who can fly, if you let him get a free runway, I mean, a guy like James Pierre is not. I mean, he's a 4 or 5 corner. I mean, you can't let speedsters like that and elite athletes get free runways like that. And when you're late opening up, that's how that stuff happens. So some of that, Minka was at fault for the Ruggs touchdown too, just by trying to pay too much attention to Darren Waller and ended up getting beat up top. But that needs to be a point of emphasis, man, because like you said, like Rodgers will take the deep ball. He's a really quick game guy right now, but like he can make all the throws. Obviously, he's one of the best to ever do it. So you can't let him hit 2 or 3 deep balls early in the game, and then next thing you know you're down like quick, like 14-0 in the first quarter. I just can't. You're not gonna be. This offense isn't built to come back from that stuff like that. So
no, if they go down 14-0 in the first quarter, you might as well look for a new game to watch. But that being said, they could stop that, and I think that Minka is a major problem with this, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I think that since the Steelers have given Minka so much freedom, he's maybe taken a little advantage of it. I think he's thinking too much. I think he's looking at every play like, I want to make the big play, and he's only 24 years old. 24-year-olds are going to do that, especially when they're given. I mean, 2-3 weeks ago, everybody was like, Minka Fitzpatrick is the next Troy Polamalu. That's a lot. That's a big label to put on somebody who now needs to go out there and perform like that. Plus, it's his contract year, and I don't think that really weighs much, but it definitely adds a little bit of pressure. If he can get this fixed, because like I said, it's both good and bad. It's Minka's problem, but Minka, if I trust anybody outside of TJ Watt to fix anything on this defense, it's going to be Minka Fitzpatrick. If he could play better over the top, if he could stay more content, I think that you shut a lot of those things down. But at the same time, to do that, do you have to take away that freedom that you've essentially given him to go play more areas of the field?
I mean, I think you just kind of, I mean, there's going to be some growing pains anytime you add a bunch of responsibility to, like, you know, somebody's plate. Even a guy like Minka, who's just phenomenal, but he does look like he's thinking. I mean, he's not taking good angles. It just looks like he's not playing as fast, and that's the issue. But you know, the corners, I mean, especially with Pierre, I feel like they're playing more. The Steelers are trying to play more zone coverage this year to maybe, I don't know the numbers on that, but it just seems like the Steelers are doing certain things that make me think they're trying to protect their corners, particularly a guy like James Pierre, who barely played last year. So I think it's just a mentality of, like, making sure that you don't give up the deep ball. Like, it's okay. You know, the Steelers don't press a ton, but, you know, just be mindful of, like, okay, we've got to make sure that we keep a lid on these explosive plays. And the pass rush, it goes hand in hand, right? Like, the pass rush is going to help that, because guys won't have they won't have as long to, you know, make those throws in the pocket down the field. So it's kind of marrying one thing. I don't know that it's necessarily maybe one player or one thing they can do. It's just kind of like more of an execution thing and just a mentality that you can't allow those big plays over the top.
Yeah, I agree. I think that growing pains is kind of like the perfect way to put this, is that, you know, he's still 24. This is the first time he's had that overall freedom. It's also the first time that he's basically looked at this whole defense and said, I could trust every single one of you guys. And with that is going to leave guys like James Pierre in situations that he can't handle. But that's okay, because it's going to lead to a lot of other situations where Minka's making plays, TJ Watt's making plays. You know, Cam Sutton gets to move around a little bit, maybe make some plays. That's kind of an unspoken, I don't want to label it as an issue, but Cam Sutton not really having a role here is great, but it also sucks because you can't trust James Pierre to play every snap on the outside, but you can't trust Trey Norwood and Arthur Millette on the inside, because after week one, both of them have basically been they've just gone to nothing. They're pretty much worthless out there for most of the time. It leaves Cam Sutton in that spot where you need him on the outside. You also need him on the inside. It really does leave a big, I don't know, gap for the secondary. At the same time, though, playing zone, I think, helps that. It's going to be rough against Aaron Rodgers, though. Devontae Adams is a guy that'll take advantage of his zone easy.
Yeah. I mean, veteran quarterbacks just in general, like, they're going to know where the holes are and stuff in that zone coverage. So you got to make sure that you don't be overly, you know, reliant on that. But, you know, I trust, and like you said, like Cam Sutton, like moving him around and moving Minka around a lot, I understand why they're doing it. And they're just going through a phase of, like, growing pains a little bit. But, you know, Sutton probably, in my opinion, I think Sutton's their best cover guy. Like, as far as, like, if I was to choose, like, who was going to shadow a Devontae Adams, I think I might want Sutton on him. But
over Joe Hayden?
I think so, man. And it's nothing against, like, Hayden. Like, you know, Hayden does a lot of things that I think are a lot better than Sutton. Like, Hayden's a lot better in run support. I trust Hayden to be more disciplined in his, like, run fits and stuff. But I think Sutton might be a little bit better of a cover guy. It's probably a hot take, but I think Sutton's definitely more versatile. We know that because he can play inside and out, and Joe doesn't really move at all from his left side. But I don't know. It's kind of tough. That's kind of brings me back to just a tidbit for the future. But I think the Steelers, if they head down to this road, which I hope they don't, to like a top 10 pick, I'd be really tempted, depending on the board, to take a cornerback, just because I think I really would. Even over just because this draft is like littered with great defensive prospects. And there's like 3 or 4 corners that I absolutely love that are going to go in the top half of the first round. And I think, like, granted, the offense needs a ton of help, and I think it's going to be a multi-off-season type transition for that unit. I think, like, it would just be so awesome having like an elite corner that can shut down one half of the field or could shadow receivers to go with Minkah Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. Like, I think that's an embarrassment of riches, in my opinion. Plus, you know, Hayden, we know this is probably his last year in Pittsburgh. So you need some type of future there anyway.
Over an offensive lineman, though, if there's like a top tier.
If it was Evan Neal, no. But the offensive line, particularly at tackle, which is like if you're picking in the first half of the first round, that's a premier position that you'd want to look at. Yeah. The tackle position doesn't look like the last 2 years, in my opinion, up top, or depth. But I mean, obviously, we're really early in the season, but it would be really hard for me. But I just think, like, I guess I'm more comparing it to like everybody. We've had a lot of quarterback conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not sure that there's going to be a quarterback worthy of taking in the top 10, even though there's guys that I really like, and I know for a fact there's going to be like 2 or 3 corners that are going to be worthy of that. So. We'll see. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. Of course, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that from January.
I was going to say, we have a long ways to go, and hopefully that's not the situation. Yeah. Before we head out here, I got to ask, if the turnaround starts this week, does the turnaround start this week? What's your game prediction? I went Packers. I went Packers by 3, 20-17 yesterday. I think Donnie said it was going to be a blowout or something. Packers like 30-10 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's Sunday in Lambeau. What's your take?
Man, I want to be optimistic, man, but it's just so hard. It's so hard with this offense right now, dude. I don't know. I was telling my buddy, I think you and I talked about it a little bit too, but just with the way the Packers play defense, man, and it's not that they have some really good players, but like the way that they're set up, like I think that the Steelers are set up well to take advantage of that. It's just execution. Like, do I think that they can do it? I don't know. I don't see the turnaround happening this week, though. I mean, I think it's going to be like maybe like a 27 or 24-17. I think the Packers cover, though. The line's 6.5, right? I think
6.5, yeah.
I think the Packers cover. I don't know. I'm really hopeful, though, man, because like they've got to figure something out offensively. They got to get some type of identity that they do well. Like, they either need to – Ben's going to have to turn back the clock and put on the Superman cape, or they're going to have to – which I don't know if that's even capable of anymore, but he's going to have to get it going, or they're in trouble, man, because I don't know if they're going to get this run game going. They're the worst rushing team in the league right now, and I don't know if that's going to be fixed this year. So
no, I don't know if it could be fixed this year. I do think that you could find a way to work around that, though. I think you can find a way to work around this, all of this, but I think it starts on the offensive line, and they don't even need to be better. They just got to gel. They got to be able to trust each other and have the offense trust them. You said they're covering. I said they're not covering. Let's hope I'm the right one here. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. We will be back on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Steelers versus Green Bay, 4:25 Eastern Time on Sunday.